So guys, I know I said last week was Penny Dreadful at its best, but this episode and many other episodes prove why Penny Dreadful is one of the best shows on TV and how there are few shows like it, in what is most likely its most daring entry yet. Hey guys, can't remember Penny Dreadful, Season 3, Episode 4, A Blade of Grass, and what an episode this was. I mean, this really was incredible. Look, you guys know him before, and I think we know by far that a Vanessa, centric episode, that is a routine thing. They're gonna do that every season. Vanessa is our main character. She's the one that has us in the story in the first place. There's so much interesting stuff going on with her, and there's a lot to explore their character. There's a lot of different areas they can take her character. Of course, the first season was us finding out about her past, her relationship with Mina, how those two were really close and everything, and which ended up happening to Mina, and why Mina has that hatred she has for Vanessa, and more what was going on there. While last season was more of how Vanessa is able to take down Evelyn, this episode is basically showing Vanessa at her worst yet, but is arguably, I think, the most daring of the bunch, and without a doubt the one that stands out the most. There are several reasons why this is a really tough episode to get to, and I'll get into why in a second, but without a doubt, one of the best episodes the show has ever done. I don't know if it was the best episode. Probably, yes, best episode of the season without a doubt. I mean, there are so many things to love about this episode, and let me just start off by talking about why this episode, I think, while, the other two were great, this episode is so drastically different from those. Now, yes, Vanessa-centric episodes tend to deviate away from the story. They tend to focus on Vanessa's life and what happened to her and kind of show something big that eventually ties into the rest of the season. But this episode was so different from that because those episodes we went places, we saw their characters, and this episode literally entirely takes place in a banning clinic and in the room and in the Seward's therapy room. Those are the only places it takes place, and it's probably one of the most captivating, intriguing hours this show has ever given us. I loved every minute of it. There are 3 characters throughout this entire episode, basically just focusing on Vanessa and her orderly, with only brief appearances by Seward. So I thought that was a very daring approach. I really loved it. There are a lot of things to get into, but let's just get into this episode because there really is a lot to dissect with this one, because really, it's not your typical episode of Penny Dreadful. I mean, a lot of people say that, I usually say Vanessa episodes, they don't really feel like regular episodes, but this episode didn't even feel like a TV show. It felt like a stage play. It was really incredible. It felt like a stage play. It felt so captivating, and I forgot that I was watching a TV show. I honestly did. This was so interesting. I absolutely loved it. You could honestly just go into this episode, and you'll know what's going on. I don't say that with many shows, but this is an episode, you could just go into it, and you'll get sucked into the story. You don't need to know what's been going on with Vanessa. You don't need to know what's been going on with Seward or any of those characters. You just need to know the situation that Vanessa's in, what the orderly's in, the relation these two develop, and definitely we'll get into that. But let's just get into this episode, and enough of my, introducing it. Let's actually talk about it, because there's a lot of stuff to get into, and, definitely I want to talk about it. Now, one last thing I do want to say before I get into the events of what happens in this episode. I know I keep delaying things, but because this season has been so divided and everyone's kind of had their own thing to do, I really didn't know if we were going to get a Vanessa-centric episode. I mean, yes, we've gotten it for the past 2 seasons, but I didn't really know if we were going to get it here, and I am so glad they decided to take it in the direction we did. But no further delay, let's get into this episode. We start off right where the last episode left off. We see Seward ask Vanessa to tell her about the orderly. Vanessa says that they barely spoke, and she doesn't remember what they talked about when they did. She tells Seward that she was in the room for 5 months, and the orderly was the only one who came in that entire time, and that's the only one that she saw. And this is a very claustrophobically, type episode. You really do feel that. And Seward has Vanessa describe the orderly in detail, and she does. And we go right to there. We see Vanessa is ripping at the padding with her fingernails when the orderly comes in with her food, and just seeing how confined she already feels and how she's already ripping at the door. He sets down the plate, he leaves, and I love the way we introduce to the orderly, because the orderly is probably the most important character in this episode. I mean, we don't know it yet, but the orderly is probably the most important part here. Now, we don't really know why yet, but I'll get into that. But basically, he's pretty much just doing his job. He gives her his food. Larry comes back, finds Vanessa still scratching at the walls. The orderly takes it away, brings back another plate, sets it down, and leaves. When he comes back, Vanessa still hasn't eaten. He says that she has to eat, but Vanessa just stares off into space, and she's not eating for whatever reason. And it's really interesting. She's already not feeling, like humanity. Humanity's kind of been stripped away from her, you definitely do see. And Seward then appears in the room. Vanessa wonders how she's there, and the alienist says that her mind is between both worlds. Asks why she didn't eat, and Vanessa says she wanted to die because she had betrayed her friend Mina. And now we are realizing when this happened, because I thought this had happened, basically in the past couple months, but that's not when this happened. This happened directly after what happened with Mina and all those results, and when everyone thought she was crazy because of what she was able to do. And she then says that she was evil and Satan had touched her, and there was another demon. And Seward tells her to try and remember who that demon was because she can't remember. And I think that part is very interesting because that really is the thing that's, really is the reason why we're seeing this. But I don't think that's the main reason why we're seeing this because, like I said, as good as a showcase as this is for Eva Green, who without a doubt killed it in this episode. I mean, she kills it every episode, but this really, I think, was the Orderly's episode because the Orderly comes in, he warns that Vanessa doesn't eat, then there will be consequences. She still refused. The Orderly straps her to a chair, force feeds her as gently as he can, but in his mind, he's doing good. I mean, his job is to get her to eat. He's going to do it in any way that he can. Even if it has to be getting her in that straitjacket, she has to eat. And later, Vanessa sits, and the Orderly tidies up around her, and when he brings her food, Vanessa tells him to bring it to her. He refuses. Vanessa said that they tortured her that day, and she's tired, and the Orderly insists that they're making her well, and Vanessa says that the injections and the questions never end. He tells her she's to begin other treatments the next day, and Vanessa wonders if it's day or night. The Orderly says that they will begin hydrotherapy, and after the treatment, she's sitting on the floor, she's wet and shivering, and I thought it was a very realistic portrayal of therapy. I mean, you go through some really crazy shit, like lobotomy, things like that. It really messes with your mind, and the Orderly comes in on his duties, he leaves, he comes back with a blanket for her, she wraps it around herself, and now we start to see throughout this episode, the thing I love is this relation between the Orderly and Vanessa. Throughout this episode, you can tell they're getting closer and closer, and the Orderly returns, he says he needs the blanket back, Vanessa insists that she'll die without it, and the Orderly explains she's not supposed to have it in case she hangs herself, which is very interesting, but again, it makes sense. When you're in a confined room like that and there's no one else there except this Orderly, I mean, yeah, you are gonna get suicidal, and you can already tell that Vanessa is kind of suicidal. She kind of wants to kill herself for what she did to Mina. We know how much she cared about Mina. We know how close those two were. Mina was the first friend she ever had, and she finally hands it over, then leaps on his back, scratching his face. He starts to hit her, but then stops. He stares at her and goes as Vanessa lunges to the door and then collapses sobbing, and it's really the first sense that the Orderly can tell that she really does need help, and he really does need to help her some way, and that is when things really change with the Orderly, because this is when the Orderly decides that he doesn't just want to be the Orderly is doing his job, because throughout this episode, you can tell that he really does not like his job. He's constantly complaining about it. He comes back after Vanessa has been put in a straitjacket so that he can feed her. He says that Dr. Banning had ordered that she wear it until they're sure she's not dangerous, because obviously she's acting very hostile, so they got her in her straitjacket, and Vanessa says that she is dangerous, she's not ill, apologizes about his face. She tells him that there's no fight left in her. The Orderly says that it's science to make her better, not torture, and Vanessa insists that it's designed to make her a normal woman and cogs like all the others. And the Orderly insists that the women he knows aren't cogs and says that it's Day if Vanessa wants it to be Day, and he refuses to tell her his name, saying that it's against regulations, which is interesting. He never says his name, and as the Orderly feeds her, he says that Vanessa must get better, warns the treatments get worse, but refuses to say how. She says that she isn't ill and that no one believes what is really the matter with her, and basically, Vanessa explains that she has been touched by Satan because her faith wasn't strong enough. Now, I thought it was a very interesting scene here because it kind of does go with what Lily is doing in the sense that men don't really understand the way that women are being treated. They're being treated like sex symbols or they're being treated like breeders. And Vanessa doesn't want to be treated that way, obviously, and you can tell that the Orderly doesn't really understand it. And I think it's a really good characterization for both of them. So the Orderly shows her the wooden spoon he's using, says that he made it for his son. He's not well, and the metal spoon hurt his mouth, so he made a wooden one. He missed it. He brought the spoon from home, refused to tell Vanessa his son's name because it's against regulations, and the Orderly asks her to get better, starts to go, says that he believes what she said about Lucifer, and he's not, he thinks that this could be true. Even as crazy as it sounds, she sounds very sincere. She doesn't sound senile, and his eyes turn black. Lucifer says that he was there, and they have a lot to catch up on, and throughout this episode, you can tell that Lucifer is very slowly possessing the Orderly. Now, I don't know how this happens, but we know that Lucifer is going to get to Vanessa in any way that he can, and we definitely see that here. So Vanessa tells Seward that she saw the Orderly with the eyes of Lucifer. Seward tells her to remember if there were any other episodes, and Vanessa orders her to stop the session because it's not, because she just doesn't want to remember these painful memories. Remember, this is supposed to be the most traumatic, dark time in Vanessa's life. She obviously doesn't want to remember this. But then we get to this really cool twist when Seward said that she can't, and Vanessa is in what is essentially a fugue statement, and she won't come out of it no matter what happens, and there's no way to get her out of it. She even says that she's had a physical and mental break, doesn't know when to lend. She knows that Vanessa won't die, and she asks what Joan would say to her, because we know that Vanessa, thinks that Seward resembles Joan a lot, and I love the way the scene was done. Just seeing that Seward really does care for her, and very much the relation between the Orderly and Vanessa are very much like Seward and Vanessa. They've started off very distant. Seward just wanted things to be very quick, and it was very much just by this session. But you can tell in this episode, she genuinely cares about Vanessa, and she really wants to get answers out of her in any way she can, and she asks what the cut wife said to her, and Vanessa says that the cut woman would have said to be true, and Seward assures Vanessa that she'll come out of it when she's found what she's there for, because she doesn't know what she's there for yet. What's really the point of all this? She promises that she won't leave Vanessa for anything in the world, tells Vanessa to keep going, because obviously the biggest part is to find out, who it was. Remember who the other demon was, what's going on there. That's a big part of it, and tells her to keep going. This is not the end of it. Even though she doesn't want to remember these memories, she has to remember them. Even though she doesn't want to, she essentially has to deal with this, and it's sad to see, but I think it was very well handled. I love the way that was done, just showing that she genuinely does care. I absolutely love that, and I thought there was some really powerful stuff there. I think, again, Patti LuPone has been killing it this season, but she was barely in this episode. Again, she's in this episode a few times, but other than that, most of it is Vanessa and the Orderly, and for the rest of this episode, we only see Seward about 2 more times, and that's Vanessa and the Orderly, which I really love, because these two have a very fascinating relationship that I really do love. We see the treatments continue and escalate. They gag her. The Orderly comes in, helps her to the chair, removes the gag, and he's slowly becoming less of someone who's just doing his job and slowly someone that's really caring for her and really does want to help her. And he brushes her hair, admits that he's not good at it at all. The Orderly says that he's sick to see Vanessa the way she is, admits that it is torture rather than science. He puts makeup on her, talks about how he would leave the Institute if he could, but jobs are scarce and he needs the work, and you can tell he's trying to open himself more up. Before he was like, oh, it's against regulations, but already he's saying more than he has, and the Orderly insists that basically Vanessa just stares at him without reacting. He says that they could walk out together, and Vanessa just stares him without reacting. I think Vanessa's kind of in denial that he's actually helping her and that he actually does care about her, and the Orderly finally holds up a mirror. He invites her to take a look. She finally does, and the Orderly says that's who she is. She should never forget it. It's a really touching scene. I love the way that was done. The fact that he said, this is who you are. You can't forget who you are. And Vanessa starts to cry. The Orderly reads to her from a book of children's poems, and it's this really great scene because it's kind of like a father type relation, but it's also like a friend type relation. It's very interesting. We see the only book of poems he reads through the night, and just doing anything to comfort her, because again, he can tell that she really feels uncomfortable here, and that she really feels like she doesn't belong here, and he's reading through the night, finally says that he has to go before the day Orderlies arrive. The Orderly takes the makeup off so that no one will discover what he's done, because obviously it's very against regulations what he's doing. He is very much going beyond what he set out to do. He doesn't care though, he wants to help her, and he tells her that one day no one will touch her without permission. He puts the gag back on, and as he goes, the Orderly says that it's Christmas. A really nice reveal. I like the way that was done, and we just realized that it was Christmas and everything. So, and again, just thinking about Vanessa missing Christmas, it's another really sad scene because you do still feel confined, and you do feel like you're trapped here. You kind of want to get out of here. But what I do love about this episode, something I definitely really enjoyed, is that you don't want to necessarily leave this padded room because it's so intriguing what's going on here. This could have easily been a very claustrophobic thing, but that claustrophobia really does change once we see this relation between these two. So later, Vanessa tells the Orderly that she's lonely, her parents stopped coming, and Vanessa figures that she will never leave. And that's true, we never really hear about Vanessa's parents. We've known that they don't really care about her, and she says she's only been with one man, and she should have died a virgin. Of course, that man was Peter, we know, who of course was engaged to Mina, and that's what this whole situation turned out. But that, of course, was because Vanessa was possessed, and says she should have died a virgin. She removes her robe and hugs the orderly, and Vanessa kisses him, and after a moment, he kisses her back, but then pushes her away, puts her robe back on. He doesn't want to, force himself on her. He doesn't want to have to do this, because again, it's extremely against regulations. You can tell that he doesn't necessarily care, but at the same time, he doesn't want to lose his job. And before he goes, Orly says that if she doesn't show signs of improvement, then Banning will lobotomize her, and she'll lose all of her body functions. And it's this great scene where he's really telling her, look, you gotta make it seem like you're somewhat better, and it seems like he kind of wants her there, like he kind of wants her to stay there so he can see her, and he says no one has ever been lobotomized, is ever the same as they were before. The Orly asks if her specialness is so important, and Vanessa asks if he would want his son to pretend to be normal, and he admits to her that he doesn't, and basically, Vanessa tells him not to ask it of her, that there really is no such thing as normal, and she really, I think, changes the Orly forever in many ways, and you really do see that here. Really love this, and again, this entire 35 minutes, we're now like 35 minutes in the episode, and all of it is resolved in these two just talking basically about, what's going on in their lives, how she's getting out of the situation, and it's really captivating. I love the way this was done. All this was so interesting. I was really loving every minute of this, and it only gets more interesting for me because the Orly sits down and asks her, what if she is, or if what she is if she isn't ill, because it's clear she isn't sick. She definitely does not belong here. And Vanessa says she's touched by Lucifer, and he wonders why Lucifer would be interested in her, which is something that I've kind of always wondered. Why would Lucifer appoint her? What is his obsession with her? Lucifer speaks through the Orderly, saying that he loves her, and basically the Orderly is possessed in this scene, but it's really Lucifer, being able to possess anyone, which is very interesting. Lucifer points out the door is locked, there's no escape, they've never been able to release him with trephining, and Vanessa says that she isn't afraid, and Lucifer tells her that he wants her to embrace him of her own volition, because she's used to Lucifer. She demands his name. Lucifer says he is the fallen angel. The shadow of a snake moves along the wall toward Vanessa, says that her God is merciful, which we always see that snake in the previews, and we know what that means. And Lucifer points out that his mercy is never, not the previews, the opening credits, but Lucifer points out that his mercy has never touched Vanessa or anyone else. They crawl toward each other. The couple joins hands, and Lucifer tells her that together they will smite God from his throne, and a man's laughter then rings out. Lucifer cowers back into the corner. The lights go out. Vanessa walks forward, and it really feels like something out of a horror movie at this point. That relation between the Orderly and Vanessa, sure, it's still going on, but it's really creepy here. Dracula appears. He's wearing the Orderly's body as well, and the way that, let me just say, Rory Kinner in this episode, holy shit, he was good. He has to play 3 different characters in this one scene, because he goes from the Orderly to Lucifer and Dracula, and doesn't really get to stop, and he just channels these perfectly. You really do feel these characters are very separate. They don't at all feel the same, and I love that. The way he goes from Lucifer to Dracula, it's just incredible. And Dracula appears. He's wearing the Orderly's body as well. Asks who Vanessa wants him to be. Lucifer says that he is the father of the beast. Dracula, the shadow of the bats flicker on the wall as Dracula tells Lucifer he dwells on Earth while Lucifer dwells in the dark netherworld. And Dracula says the world is turning away from faith. Vanessa is a thing of the flesh. He doesn't want her spirit. He wants her flesh. And once Vanessa kisses him, the world become a pestilence to mankind as the nights. Creatures emerge. Dracula caresses her. Vanessa asks what name she will know him by, and Dracula tells her who he is, and she feels satisfied because now she knows the name and she knows who it was. And I thought that was a really good scene. Vanessa backs away, says that there are 2 brothers that have fallen from grace, the spirit and the animal. Her soul and body are promised to God. She dares them both to do their worst and starts chanting in Verbia Diablo, with that language that she always does. Vanessa then levitates, casts them out with her incantation, finds herself in her cell, sitting with the Orderly, and he wonders why Lucifer would be interested in her. Vanessa says she's tired and needs sleep, and we realize that he didn't remember any of this, that he was basically possessed. All that he said before, all that we just saw, that wasn't the Orderly at all. That was him being possessed by Lucifer and Dracula. And what's I love about that scene is that you don't really know if Lucifer and Dracula possessed the Orderly, or if Vanessa was just imagining it. I'm sure they obviously got to her, but were they really in the form of the Orderly, or was it just what Vanessa saw? Again, this is under a hallucination, so I think that's very interesting. She says she's tired, she needs to sleep, and Seward tells Vanessa that she can come out now. Vanessa refuses, saying that she's not done done there yet. And I love that we go from Vanessa wanting to be pulled out of this immediately to really just being intrigued and not wanting to come out of this at all. We see the Orderly comes in with food after Vanessa's met with Banning, has had her head shaved for the surgery. It's really sad to see, but she finally says she couldn't counterfeit normality well enough for Banning, spoke of the glory of God in all things. The Orderly assures her that she'll feel no pain and talks about his wife and his son. He says that he resigned and will be leaving the next day and that he just can't be there anymore. Why? Because she is so prone to darkness and things like that, and he doesn't understand that. And the Orderly describes what he was talking about traveling and how only one thing lives in the frozen north, cold and lonely, and we basically realize that this Orderly is no Orderly. This Orderly is who Caliban was before he was Caliban. This is, in fact, the creature before he was the creature. This is when he was a man. It's an incredible reveal, but just that little subtle reveal I absolutely love because it makes so much sense why we saw this. I mean, I've said before, this season has been discovering who the creature really was and figuring out his origin, things like that. You know, creature, Caliban, John Clare, whatever you want to call him. I just love that we found this out because now we know really what's going on. Obviously, he was talking about Jack and, you know, his wife. I can't think of her name now, but basically, he assures Vanessa that he will stay long enough so that the last person she sees before the law with Tommy is someone who loves her. And now we know why Vanessa and Caliban have that relationship that they do have and why he went to see her. Now, we know that Caliban's memory is very fuzzy and that he doesn't remember a lot of things, but I kind of feel like some of this he does remember. I mean, why would he reach out to Vanessa? Why would he try to have the relationship he does have with her? And why would he try to get away and go to the frozen north? I mean, it just feels like it makes sense. I mean, obviously, and it's interesting because the Orderly before, he feels, he feels like he doesn't belong with her because he's human and she's not. But now he's also a creature and he believes that, basically, when you're cold and lonely, he was cold and lonely, he needed to go to the north and that is why he went there, which is really interesting. Vanessa's kissed him, the Orderly says goodbye, and it's just this incredible scene knowing that these two had a past and had this relationship. I never could have thought of this happening. I never could have thought that Vanessa and, the creature, anything that happened with them, but this episode implies that something did happen, which I really did love. But let's talk about this a little bit more, because that's really the thing I definitely do want to talk about in this episode. Prior to this, we've only known of Caliban as how we've seen him, as this monster, the Victor created, how everyone looks at him that way, but this episode really does show the past that he had, and I've said it before in the beginning of the season that is really one of the things they're trying to do. They're trying to explore some of these arcs and show how they were before they were the way they were, and I think that's very interesting. I really love the way all that was done. Really incredible stuff there, I gotta say. And Rory Kinnear, I mean, he really just acted the hell out of this, because I never really thought that this was him until he said the line. Like, that makes so much sense. Why else would his son be dying? Why else would he not want to mention his wife? It makes so much sense. I love it. We now know why he went to the frozen north. We know why he had the relationship he did with Vanessa, and Vanessa doesn't suspect a thing. That's the thing I love, is that I don't really know if Vanessa knows that John Clare is actually the Orderly, which I think is very interesting. And again, like I said, he doesn't fully understand, he doesn't remember a lot of things, but he clearly, I think, does have some memories here. And really, I think this was a fleshed out episode for the Orderly than it was for Vanessa, because we already know all we need to know about Vanessa pretty much. This episode was a great episode for Vanessa, but it really was the Orderly's origin story, the way that Vanessa forever changed the Orderly. I mean, think about it. The Orderly started off this episode not wanting anything to do with his job, not wanting anything to do, really just did what he needed to do for Vanessa that he was told to, and then he just went on his way. But he just started to care more and more for her, and he became entranced and so fascinated in this one woman, and the way that she just changed him, and the relationship these two developed. It's so fascinating. It was so interesting. I love the way that whole situation was done. I think it was incredible, and I just really couldn't get enough of it. I could not get enough of it. I loved everything about the relationship. I think it's one of the strongest things the show has ever done, really. I love the way both of those things, both of that turned out. But then we get to the end of this episode. Very quickly, we see Vanessa comes out of her trance. She's crying. Stewart offers her a drink. The alienist asks her what she remembers. Vanessa says that she remembers everything, and she now knows the name of her enemy, who she needs to go after, and who is basically the one that she's, feeling this presence of, and that, of course, is Dracula. She has no suspicions, but she does not know that Dr. Sweets is Dracula. She just knows that something is definitely going on there, but that is how the episode ends. fans. Absolutely love that. Now let's get more into this episode. So overall, guys, really impressive stuff. Really amazing episode overall. I mean, there are a few shows that can really do an episode like this. I really said that. I mean, a lot of shows don't want to do this sort of thing. This is why I'm, really annoyed with Fear the Walking Dead for not doing this, because think of how Penny Dreadful does this. I mean, every season, they devote one episode where they're just saying, hey, fuck the other characters, let's focus on Vanessa and really flesh out the story. But this episode was not even about Vanessa. It was about the Orderly, his origin story, how the Orderly became the creature we know today, and what his life was before then. Now, we still don't know his name, but it doesn't really matter. We don't really need to know his name. That's always been the fascinating thing about the creature, or John Clare, or Caliban, or whatever you want to call him, is that he is his own man, that he is a good man, he's done good things, he's had a past, and now we really are starting to figure out what that past is, and I really do love that. I think it's one of the most interesting things the season has done. Everything about that is just so interesting. I really love that overall. But I also really love the story we were told of Vanessa, how she really felt lost and how the Orderly kind of helped her with that, and how, she really doesn't want to go back to these dark times and everything, but really, it really made her rediscover things, and it really satisfied her. And in many ways, it seemed like it kind of helped her, because it seems like she now is ready to face Dracula. She now knows what's going on. She knows she needs to go after Dracula, so that's something I'm really looking forward to. And how she ends up, taking down Dracula, we don't know at this point. We don't really know how she's going to take down Dracula, but I think that's going to be very interesting, how that's all going to turn out. This, without a doubt, though, was the best of the 3 Vanessa-centric episodes we had. I mean, it should be noted. I don't really think it should be noted, but I haven't said that yet, but it definitely was the best of the 3. All 3 have been great, but this one was just on a whole other level. I mean, like I said, it felt like a stage play. When you have an entire episode just in a, padded room, this white padded room, and it seems like everything, the creepiest stuff could happen there. It's so intriguing. I loved it. I thought it was so good. But next week, we are back in business. We now have 4 episodes left this season, which I can't believe, but we do. Actually, no, we have 5 episodes left, but I think the last 2 are going to be a 2-hour episode, so I think that's really cool as well. But the thing is, we still have 5 episodes left. I'm not looking at this as we only have 5 episodes left. We still have 5 episodes left. We still have 5 episodes left to tell this story. It does not mean that things are going to get convoluted. And I know a lot of people are worried that after this episode, oh, things are going to get convoluted and things aren't going to get solved. Well, here's the thing. We still have 5 episodes left to do that. I mean, it looks like next week we're very much focusing back to everyone. We're going to focus more on what's going on. I mean, we still have a very big story to tell, but we're really starting to find out more and more about it. It's starting to become more and more interesting as it goes on. Really, like I said, I do think this is the best season Penny Dreadful has done. Just the more this goes on, the more I'm loving this season. Even more so than last season. Last season was great, but this season just has a whole new vibe to it, and it's episodes like this that really are showing me why. It's really getting more into why these characters are the way they are, and their humanity and things like that. And that's something that the first 2 seasons kind of hinted at, but this season is full on. That is the meaning of the season, is who these characters are, who they want to be, who they want to turn up as, and really, what is their purpose? We know, we discovered what happened with Ethan, and now we know really what the Orderly's purpose is, or Caliban, the creature, whatever you want to call him, which I think is really cool. Seward as well. This is forever changed Seward. You can definitely tell. I mean, she clearly is a lot more interested in Vanessa. She really wants to help her. She's no longer being this dismissive, because she's come across as very dismissive, very passive-aggressive, and really just very straight to the point. And she's really not that way after this. Now it seems like she's very interested in Vanessa. She wants to help her. She wants to figure out how to really overcome this. And that whole situation is very interesting, so I'm loving the way that's turning out. Now the only question is, does Vanessa find out, and how will she find out, that this creature, that Dracula is in fact Sweet? I mean, I think she knows that Sweet is connected to Dracula, because she knows, obviously, the Hall of Mirrors, that vampire was hunting her down, so I think eventually she's going to do that. But again, what I love is that Vanessa's very smart. She's ahead of a lot of people, and it seems like Dracula's plan is not exactly going to work. We'll have to see how that turns out. I do like that we kind of know more what's going on, that Dracula basically, wants to find her, and that's kind of what's going on there. It's a really deadly relationship, though, because it seems like, she really kind of does fall under a spell very easily, but that's really the only way to do that, so I think that's very interesting as well. But overall, guys, most guys saw this episode. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Now, I know I've been rambling, but I'm just so impressed by the way this episode was done. I love the Penny Dreadful devotes at least an hour to an episode that is completely just a bottle episode. I mean, this is the definition of a bottle episode. It's not even a bottle episode, it's a one-room episode is what I call call it really. A stage play is really what I call it. This was Penny Dreadful, the stage play, and I really love that. But let me know what you guys saw this episode. Absolutely loved it. Incredible stuff. All three actors here, they deserve Emmys. They really do. I mean, they all deserve Emmy. Eva Green, I don't know why she still hasn't gotten Emmy nominated. It appalls me that she hasn't. I want her to get Emmy nominated, but she still hasn't. But if anything, Rory Kinnear, he needs to get nominated after this. I mean, if he does not get nominated, I don't know what's going on. I'm still surprised that Billy Piper didn't get that nomination. I mean, this show severely, most of the shows I watch, most of my favorite shows, Outlander, Americans, Penny Dreadful, they all get snubbed during award season, and I don't understand why. And maybe it's because of this episode, because I know a lot of people thought this episode was boring, which if you thought this episode was boring, you clearly don't like good TV. I'm sorry, you just don't. You should be watching something, I'm sorry this isn't action every 5 minutes. If you want action every 5 minutes, go watch something like Sons of Anarchy, or go watch something like, what gives me action every 5? I don't know, but watch something gives you action every 5 minutes. I'm not really sure. Let me know what you guys saw this out. So love to hear your thoughts on it. We'll see you guys next year, which will be for the series premiere of Preacher, which I am definitely looking forward to. I've heard amazing things about it, and then we'll see you guys for that. Okay, bye.